In this lesson, we're going to be talking about wireless networking. Wireless networking is pretty much as the name implies, it's networking without wires. Actually, the idea of wireless networking goes back a really long way. We've been doing packets over wireless since the at least 80s and 70s, if not earlier than that. There was an Aloha net for a while in Hawaii that used radios to do wireless networking, and that goes back a really long way. The wireless networking that most people are familiar with, though, comes from the 802.11 standard. And the 802.11 standard is actually maintained by a group called IEEE or IEEE. It's also called Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi means wireless fidelity. It's a layer 2 protocol that defines connections between endpoints, and in this case, they're using different frequencies in the gigahertz, multi-gigahertz range in order to transmit data from one point to another. Now, there are multiple types of 802.11, and I've actually got something called Wi-Fi Explorer up on my Mac here, and you can see that there's a network that it's found, and it's actually running 802.11bg. Now, 802.11b ran in the 2.4 gigahertz range, and it supported speeds up to 11 meg. G also ran in the 2.4 gigahertz range, and it supports transmissions up to 54 meg. There are a couple of other types that you may have run across before. The first one is 802.11a that runs in the 5 gigahertz range. It was actually adopted in 1999, and it runs up to about 54 meg. So there are 4 primary types of 802.11 wireless at the moment. Although there are new standards being worked on, there's currently one called 802.11ac that supports up to 866 meg for transmission speeds. And there's additionally one called 802.11ad that's in a draft stage now. It's also called WiGig, and that will support transmission speeds up to 7 gigabits per second. So Wi-Fi uses this idea of an SSID or a service set identifier in order to give a name to the network. So when you connect, you actually know what network you're connecting to. It's not like with a wire, you pick it up, you can trace it back to the wall and figure out where it's plugged in. With Wi-Fi, since they're radio frequencies, you don't know who you're connecting to without there being a name associated with it. And so there's an SSID. Now, in this case, you can see the channel that's associated with it. It actually gives me a signal strength as well. And I can go to a signal strength graph. Here I've got a signal strength graph for this particular SSID. So Wi-Fi is actually becoming very common. You'll find it all over the place. A lot of places offer free Wi-Fi, like Starbucks, for example. You can get free Wi-Fi at McDonald's. It's becoming just a cost of doing business for some companies because it's really pretty cheap and easy to use. Now, the one thing that you don't get in this particular case, I've got a wireless network with no security on it, so there's no encryption. The reason that I do that here is because I'm kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody else anywhere near that would be able to jump on my signal, and it's just easier and more convenient for us in the house to not have encryption or have to deal with passwords in order to connect to the network. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere and don't have to worry about people parking nearby and jumping on your wireless network, you can certainly do open encryption and not have that encryption. The downside to that is it's easy to see what's going on, which frankly isn't very different from a wired network where if I can get on your wired network, I can see what's going on there as well. But Wi-Fi does support encryption in a couple of different types, and we will talk about those in a subsequent lesson. But for now, that's just some of the basics of wireless networking and Wi-Fi.